Concordia, Costa Concordia.
Midnight on Friday, the 13th of January, 2012. Europe's largest luxury cruise liner, the Costa Concordia, is sinking.
It was just a silent acknowledgement that we were all going to die.
The emergency evacuation is running into problems.
After the initial thud, I knew we should have got off the ship straight away.
As thousands of passengers and crew desperately try to abandon this stricken megaship,
you know deep down inside that the chances of fatalities are high.
the captain is no longer on board.
This video shows the captain. He claimed he tripped and found himself on board a lifeboat.
And as a desperate hunt for survivors begins, it's the captain, Francesco Scatino, who takes the blame.
In a multi-billion-dollar industry, it has to be one person's mistake.
The company were very quick, it seemed, to distance themselves from the disaster.
Rumours about his behaviour that night begin to circulate and threaten to seal his fate.
She was a guest of the captain, but not on the passenger list.
I kept thinking, is he really that bad? How could someone that negligent be in charge of a ship that big?
10 years on, many are still haunted by unanswered questions.
I didn't understand why some people died, and I didn't.
Captain Scatino needs to give an answer for this.
We reveal the truth of what went wrong.
There's never one reason why accidents happen.
I later found out that the officers who were on the bridge were on the telephone with Costa.
That single decision has changed so many lives.
Built 6 years earlier at a cost of nearly £400 million, the Costa Concordia was expected to be unsinkable. But at 9:45 p.m, she has fatally collided with rocks close to the Italian island of Giglio. 4,229 people are on board.
We were like zombies. No one was speaking, passengers and crew members. Everyone was moaning, crying, still calling out names.
As the ship was sinking, I was on there for about 6 hours when a helicopter came by. And so it was like this sense of hope, hope, hope.
We must have been one of the last lifeboats, I think, because there was loads and loads of life jackets.
There were people missing and people hadn't been reunited with their families. There was a lot of people who were scared.
I really didn't process that I was safe until the following morning when I could leave a voicemail for my dad and I let him know that I was on solid land.
But there are still people on board, and the huge rescue operation attracts the world's media.
I packed a bag and got in my car and drove to Porto Santo Stefano to cover the story.
Survivors are being transported by ferry in their thousands to the mainland at Porto Santo Stefano.
I saw all of these people around. They just looked like regular, normal people until you look closely. There were people with blood and bruises and tears on their clothing. There were so many people who were soaking wet, and it's cold, it's January. I thought, oh my gosh, these are the survivors of this bizarre accident.
You were alive. You know, God's sake, we've seen the sunset, we've seen the sunrise again, we're alive.
An unknown number of passengers are still trapped within the maze of corridors and cabins of this 17-deck megaship. Faced with coordinating rescue efforts is Giglio Police Chief Roberto Galli.
Appena fa giorno che inizia e la scena era molto, diciamo, agghiacciante, perché questo mostro di nave che adagiata su un fianco.
The collision with rocks in shallow water has torn a 60-meter gash in the hull, with part of the rock still attached.
It was almost too shocking to take pictures. It just didn't seem like it could be real. If someone were to make a movie about a cruise ship crash, they would have never done it this way. They would have never put the ship on its side like that. It's too unbelievable.
There was absolutely a sense of a hunt for missing people. We were able to check off, we've seen that person, we've seen that person.
There were rescues going on, there were helicopters above, there were, people crawling up and around the ship.
It's very possible that there was a number of people who were within the ship who could still be saved.
With the giant vessel at risk of capsizing further, a desperate search begins for the 100 who are unaccounted for.
One of the people that was missing was the maitre d', who was a big personality on the ship.
The ship's hotel director at the time of the crash was Senior Officer Manrico Giampadroni.
A true hero. This is a man that everybody had seen him. He'd helped everybody onto the lifeboats. The witnesses that remembered this man helping them, saving their lives.
Being in this water for as little as just 2 hours could be fatal. After 40, the chances of survival are almost zero.
It's a race against the clock. We've got sea temperatures in which people will be slowly becoming hypothermic.
Manrico hasn't been seen for 28 hours.
He'd gone back down into the depths of the ship to see if there was anybody else in any of the rooms, and he'd fallen.
Specialist teams from across Italy have been scrambled, including Francesco Boaria's dive rescue squad.
Per noi sicuramente abbiamo capito subito che è stata l'operazione più difficile e più complicata della nostra carriera.
The divers were swimming through tablecloths and cutlery, looking for survivors or bodies.
Non riuscivamo a vedere dove mettevamo i piedi.
The unknown conditions threatened to call off the mission at any moment.
The possibility that the ship would sink further made it a tremendously difficult operation to try and get onto the ship and into the ship.
The ship was moving and settling itself into the rocks on the bottom.
The hotel director was still stuck inside the sinking ship.
Delle ore più lunghe della mia vita per adesso. Avevo trovato una padella e la battevo, cercavo di batterla, ma...
He'd broken his leg and had become wedged with his head, with part of his body above water.
Non vedevo arrivare le persone che mi dovevano salvare. Poi finalmente sono apparsi come il grande Francesco con la sua equipe.
Il quale, come ci ha visti, ha fatto un sorriso che non si è più tolto dalla faccia.
Mi ha detto, la prima cosa che mi ha detto Francesco mi ha detto: stai tranquillo, tu scusate un po', dopo 10 anni c'è ancora un po' di emozione.
We'd heard that the hotel director was found alive. It was just the news we needed.
But for others trapped on board, time has run out.
Shortly after the accident, they were pulling out bodies. There were body bags and young victims and all these sorts of horrific stories.
As the search for victims continues, a quest for answers and who's to blame begins.
Everybody started talking about the fact that this was a terrible, terrible miscalculation on someone's part.
What's going on here? There's a bigger human element to this.
All eyes turn to the Concordia's captain.
How could someone that negligent be in charge of a ship that big?
En route from Civitavecchia to Savona, the Costa Concordia, one of the grandest cruise ships of its kind, has struck rocks and sustained serious damage to its hull.
When I heard the news of Costa Concordia, at first, I almost made an assumption that there'd been some kind of mechanical failure.
If you were a master of a ship and you found yourself flooding and had lost electrical power and were drifting, it's unprecedented territory.
By Monday, the ship's owners, Costa Cruises, are under intense scrutiny. They call a press conference to make a statement about the ship and her captain.
I would like to think that any captain in this situation would be supported by their company.
We believe it has been a human error here. The captain did not follow the authorized route.
It was quite surprising how quickly that press conference made a blame and directed that at the captain.
The captain of Costa's flagship cruise liner is 51-year-old Francesco Schettino.
The captain was the captain, first and foremost, of a very expensive asset, carrying thousands of lives.
He'd been a master for 6 years or so. On paper, he had all the skills and experience that you would expect.
There is an element of glamour goes with being an officer on board a cruise ship, because that's the way the public see the officers, and the media, I think, latched onto this perceived lifestyle of glamour.
The first story I heard about Captain Schettino after the accident was that he'd gone to the Hotel Bahamas, which is at the top of the port, in search of dry socks. And he'd carried with him, according to people at that hotel, some luggage off the ship.
As public speculation intensifies about Captain Schettino, the official investigation also gathers pace.
Investigators were keen to speak to the captain promptly. The reason for that is the captain will hold more information than anybody else.
The Concordia's captain, Francesco Schettino, appeared before a judge today. He was released from custody but will remain under house arrest, accused of manslaughter and abandoning his ship.
Quindi era una persona un po' stralunata, era un po' assente.
Here's this kind of a coward of a man taken out of the police van into the courthouse. There were all sorts of bizarre leaks about his record as a captain, about the kind of character that he was. You have to wonder who was painting the profile of the captain.
I started to ask myself the question, what's going on here? There's a bigger human element to this than normal. There's been an error here.
Rumours are fueled when a recording is leaked of a series of calls from the night of the disaster.
That was a pivotal moment in this story. When the audio tape was released of the Port Authority of Livorno telling Captain Schettino to get the blank back on the ship, Schettino became, for Italians, a national embarrassment.
Captain Schettino is heard speaking with the Livorno Coast Guard chief, Gregorio De Falco.
De Falco was upset and angry, and you just felt like he wanted to get there and save those people.
Era così importante che ci fosse a bordo il comandante della nave.
DeFalco's priority is to save lives, but he's 120 kilometers away from the crash site.
Had he been there, he would have scaled that ship with his bare hands. He was kind of like this superhero figure.
At this point, the captain is on board a lifeboat, away from his ship.
Che volevo suggerire, in sostanza, di tornarci a bordo, perché comunque sarebbe stato un eroe. Perché avrebbe salvato delle persone.
Ci sono già dei cadaveri, schettino. Avanti! Quanti cadaveri ci sono? Non lo so, uno l'ho sentito. Me lo devi dire lei quanti ce ne sono, Cristo!
There was this moment, I think, of great pride for Italians when they heard him. There was someone who was doing the right thing.
Adesso ho chiamato altri sorgodi. Lei è un'ora che mi sta dicendo questo. Adesso va a bordo.
Il famoso torni a bordo cazzo che secondo me non doveva essere pronunciato.
Del Falco è stato super aggressivo e non capendo la situazione del comandante, perché una volta che uno scende dalla nave in quelle condizioni non ci tornerà mai più su.
E con 100 persone ancora a bordo lei abbandona la nave, cazzo!
Everything was centered around the captain and him not fulfilling his responsibility to coordinate the rescue. That was his moment of highest calling and duty, and he didn't fulfill that.
One week on, the relatives of those missing in the disaster are allowed onto the island of Giglio for the first time. Officials confirm that 20 people are still unaccounted for, with 12 now confirmed as dead. Kevin Rebello is searching for his younger brother Russell, a ship's waiter.
My main objective was firstly to know, was he on the ship? Then to find out, is he safe? We were born in India, Mumbai, a place called Juhu, that's near the sea. So that's how passion for the seas came for him. So we do care of each other.
I knew Russell Rebello to be very friendly, very sweet, and so thoughtful, even though it seemed like he was always working.
When we reached the port, I said, wow, this is not good. It was like a war zone, you know? And there were very less civilians, very less people around. So it was like, whom should I ask?
There were more than 1,000 crew on board the Costa Concordia, and most were given shelter at a local hotel.
So I enter the hotel, and I see a guy standing over there. I said, look, I'm here for my brother. His name is Russell. As soon as he glanced at the picture, he paused for a couple of seconds, and he tells me, I was with your brother in the last minutes when the ship sank. I skipped a beat. There are thousands of people, and the first person I speak to is the last person who was in contact with my brother.
Kevin makes it his quest to involve himself in the 24/7 search for Russell.
Può essere anche ferito, perso la coscienza, qualsiasi cosa può succedere. Spero ancora, spero da sempre.
He becomes a familiar face to the rescue teams who search unexplored areas of the 290-meter-long ship.
When they were going into the mission, they used to say, we are going to find Russell.
C'ho un bel ricordo di Kevin. Anche lui se ne stava tranquillamente in disparte, aspettava notizie sul fratello.
That took me around a week to 10 days to really sink in that, okay, now it's overdue, it's over time, and it's not possible to have any more news.
It's a desperate waiting game. Then in one day alone, the bodies of 8 victims are recovered, including the youngest, 5-year-old Diana Alotti.
A un certo punto, dopo circa 20 minuti di immersione, sono passato sotto ad una porta a vetri che formava quasi una barriera. Subito ho visto illuminato la Diana, la bimba, che era abbracciata da suo padre. Appena l'ho vista non ho pensato né ai miei figli, bensì ho pensato a come recuperarla.
Io personalmente ho caricato sull'elicottero dei Vigili del Fuoco il corpicino di Diana quando l'hanno portato a terra. E la cosa che mi è rimasta più dentro è stato questo corpicino poggiato sulla parete dell'elicottero e portato via.
You start hearing that people had died. That's when it really hit home, and I felt awful. And I felt terrible for their families.
There was a blame game going around. Why was the ship at a place where there was a rock? And everything seemed to point to Captain Scatino. How could someone that negligent be in charge of a ship that big?
It was a calm sea. The sea was calm.
The captain's story is that he was instructed to sail past and salute the island. Why would they do this during the hours of darkness? Who would actually make the call? Did it come from the company or was it the master himself?
On the 9th of July 2013, 18 months after the Costa Concordia cruise ship ran aground off the Italian coast, the trial of her captain, Francesco Scatino, begins.
It was held in the small town of Grosseto in the theater, which seemed perfect at the time on some level because it was a little bit of a show trial. The journalist sat up in the back, and Scatino always sat kind of in the first row to the right. You'd see his profile as he's looking at the whole thing, and his slick black hair, and he's always wearing his suit.
It's unimaginable to think of yourself in that situation as a captain myself, thinking that your ship that you were in command of has ended up in that position and that people have lost their lives.
Out of the entire ship's crew, the captain is the only one facing trial.
I heard rumors that there were private meetings going on between Costa and the officers with regards to taking plea bargains.
A plea bargain, if accepted by the court, will allow the Costa employees to avoid both a public trial and a possible harsher punishment.
It was a very scripted situation in which they would admit culpability.
The judge accepts plea bargains for 5 Costa Cruises employees. Accused of manslaughter and causing serious injury, they are given jail sentences, ranging from 18 to 34 months. But none serves time in prison. The rescued hotel director, Manrico Giampadroni, who had helped so many to safety, is one of the 5.
La frustrazione psicologica, allora la mia vita era propensa al salvataggio delle persone.
Along with other senior crew, he's given a 30-month suspended sentence for failing to help prevent the accident or respond quickly enough.
Io ho sempre avuto la coscienza pulita perché io sono sempre stato convinto di aver fatto il massimo durante questo evento qua del Concordia. Di più non potevo fare.
Francesco Scatino is denied a plea bargain. Now the only defendant, he faces charges of multiple manslaughter, abandoning his ship, and causing a shipwreck.
Scatino, I think, in so many ways made himself the perfect scapegoat, the perfect villain. He made so many mistakes. He did so many things wrong after the accident, so that everyone assumes that he made them then to cause the accident.
But the big question for the court is whether the captain was acting alone. Exactly what happened on that night of Friday the 13th when the Costa Concordia diverted from her usual course to perform a sail-by or salute to the island of Giglio.
A salute or a cruise by is where you go close to an island or to a point of interest. It's an added bonus to the cruise, which isn't usually in the brochure.
Who would actually make the call? Did it come from the company, or was it the master himself deciding to do this?
Since the disaster, the company and the captain have been firmly at odds.
Costa was saying, well, this is a rogue captain who didn't follow any of the rules and who, went off on his own and took this big ship too close to the island.
The captain's story is that he was instructed to sail past and salute the island.
I'm convinced that the company were fully aware that these close cruising events took place.
June 2011, foghorns blaring, superstructure lit. Here she is close to the rocks. Local fishermen publicly complained even then she was coming too close, far too close.
Even if the instruction to salute the island came from the very top of the company, the captain could have considered we're in hours of darkness here. The captain could still have said, no, it's not happening.
The first officer, one of the 5 who had been granted a plea bargain, testifies that Schettino acted independently.
Il comandante è salito sul ponte e mi disse che dovevamo fare la navigazione turistica al Giglio e che dovevamo modificare la rotta.
Schettino acknowledges in court that he didn't inform Costa of the change of route, stating that because it was not an official sail-by, he wasn't required to.
I can understand why the company would say that the captain was responsible.
On the 17th of July, just 1 week in, the trial is rocked by the arrival of Dominika Cermotan. Rumoured to be the young lover of the married captain, she's already a major news story herself.
The story was Captain Schettino had a young woman with him who was a Moldovan dancer, a very beautiful blonde woman.
I knew Dominika. She was a lovely, lovely young woman. I had no idea she was on board.
She was a guest of the captain, but not on the passenger list.
The presence of the guest, Dominika, on board the bridge would have been a slight distraction for the captain, possibly.
It wasn't that she was kissing his ear while he was, driving the ship. It wasn't a situation like that. She was there so that he could impress her.
With the vessel operating so close to the island, the attention that's required to navigating the ship has to be perfect.
There are all these things that got in the way of what the story was, which was a tragedy.
What you write or what you're looking for is not the truth, it's not me. It's the case and the people who died.
All of a sudden, everybody's chasing the story of the Moldovan dancer. Had it not crashed, nobody would have known that she was up there.
Whatever distractions the captain may have had, recordings used in court from the ship's bridge reveal that at 9:39 he takes command of the vessel. Schettino gives orders to the helmsman, one of the 5 who will go on to take a plea bargain.
That night I went to the bridge 5 minutes, 6 minutes before, because it was only my intention to salute to the island, to blow the whistle, nothing more.
Captain Schettino believes all is well with the route. Until now.
No one of the bridge team said a word because they have to do that. As captain, we are already off course.
He becomes aware of an immediate danger.
I realized some white foam in the dark, and I realized the presence of shallow water in front of me.
Schettino's instinct is to command the helmsman to turn the ship to the right, starboard, to avoid the hazard. But it was too little, too late.
To reduce the swinging of the stern towards the rocks, I was ordering the rudders to be placed hard to port.
With the hull of the ship just meters from the rocks, the captain is hoping to use a left or port turn of the rudders to push the stern of the ship to the right and avoid collision. At this last command, the helmsman briefly steers the ship to starboard instead.
Captain Scatino did give numerous orders. Some of them were misunderstood by the helmsman.
He blamed his Indonesian helmsman for not understanding the command.
If it had any effect, it was minimal. The accident was well on its way to happening before the helmsman's mistakes contributed to the accident.
The collision is devastating, tearing a 60-meter-long hole in the hull.
As soon as the Costa Concordia hit rocks at 9:45, and as soon as flooding occurred, it should have been apparent that the ship was in a serious situation.
Within just 10 minutes of impact, at least 3 of the ship's watertight compartments, designed to keep the ship afloat, have been flooded.
If enough of these watertight compartments are damaged, then the vessel will sink. She will remain afloat with maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 watertight compartments flooded. Beyond that, the vessel is in very serious danger.
But no announcement is made to evacuate passengers and crew.
An electrical fault with one of the generators, but the situation is under control and our technicians are aiming to rectify the situation at this time. So please remain calm.
Wait. I knew from straight away after the initial thud, I knew we should have got off the ship straight away.
There was a delay between the impact and evacuating the ship, and that would be the captain's decision.
Imagine that it's not an easy decision, the one that you have to say to a community of more than 4,000 passengers, you just leave the ship, and then later on we will see. Because still, during the abandoning process of the ship, you can provoke casualty.
It's not known why that delay happened. Perhaps the captain was waiting for more information to come, or perhaps he wanted the vessel to come closer to land and settle on land.
And that's exactly what happened. During the 69 minutes from impact to the abandoned ship order, the Costa Concordia drifts and comes to rest on a rock shelf just meters from the island.
I later found out that the officers who were on the bridge were on the telephone with Costa, and I know that the last thing that a cruise ship wants to do is call an evacuation.
There was a whole support network from the engine room, also from the people on the bridge, who should have been advising the master what the right thing to do. But it would appear the whole system failed, of which the captain was the head.
The captain's delay, to my opinion, did lead to fatalities on board the vessel.
The command is given to evacuate the ship.
There is this romanticized idea that the highest chief officer is the one that will stay with the ship. And Captain Francesco Scatino did not fulfill that role.
I have witnesses that I was forced to go out of the ship together with the second in command of the ship.
Captain Scatino claims that he fell into a lifeboat that he was helping to launch.
The ship was tilting over one side all of a sudden. If the ship is tilting over one side and your floor become a wall where you don't have other option.
This video shows the captain. He claimed he tripped and found himself on board a lifeboat. But these pictures added to the judge's belief that he calmly abandoned his ship.
Scatino's claims are further tested by the appearance of a key witness, Giglio Police Chief Roberto Galli. He says he encountered Scatino on the night of the disaster on the cliffs overlooking the ship. Some 300 people were still on board.
Lui era al telefono, da fare parlo un pochino con questi ufficiali che mi dicono che erano scivolati a mare, infatti erano tutti bagnati. Mentre il comandante era bello asciutto, gli stavo dando la possibilità di tornare sulla nave e lui mi ha detto che lui doveva rimanere sugli scogli perché da lì lui stava svolgendo le operazioni di evacuazione. Sono rimasto molto...
He had left the ship with 300 to 400 people still on board.
The reaction of Scatino was so shameful. How could you, as a captain, leave people?
On the 23rd of July 2014, the wreck, carefully refloated, makes her final journey to Genoa for dismantling. The largest and most expensive salvage operation in history nears completion. Out of the 32 victims, one remains missing. It's in these last moments that the wreck gives up her final secrets for one family.
When they start dismantling the ship, layer by layer, floor by floor, they reach to this floor where under all the furniture, they find my brother trapped in there. Of course, not alive.
When I saw his picture come out and that he was one of the lives lost, I mean, I wept and wept and wept.
I didn't understand why some people died. And I didn't, in a way, because I did go back to my cabin. So it was no different to other people going back to their cabin. And then, unfortunately, the worst thing possible happened to them.
Quello che cercava lui, secondo me, più che il fratello, se per sé, era un qualcosa da poter dire ai genitori: questo è vostro figlio e ve l'ho portato.
Russell Rebello was last seen assisting passengers into lifeboats.
He lost his life helping others, so I'm grateful for that because I've met people whose lives he saved. There are small, instances where people contact me on the anniversary date to thank me for what he did to them. He did his responsibility, his job that he had on this planet.
The Costa Concordia disaster was, in many ways, the accident that should never have happened, and everyone said wouldn't happen in an industry which was getting bigger, the ships are getting bigger.
The Costa Concordia has become really, really emblematic of all that is dangerous about these giant cruise ships.
No one knew what would happen if a serious incident happened on board a cruise ship of the size and scale of Costa Concordia.
The company, for sure, had questions to answer about the safety of the ship, the manning of the ship, procedures used on board the ship. That lies with the company.
On the 11th of February 2015, after a trial that spans 19 months, Francesco Scatino's sentence is delivered to the world, centre stage at Grosseto Theatre.
Lo condanna alla pena complessiva di anni 16 di reclusione e mesi 1 di arresto.
It seemed extraordinary to me to isolate the master when an event such as this is always a team effort, and all those officers on the bridge everyone had their part to play.
Per me il colpevole non è stato soltanto il comandante Schettino, ma chi ha fatto la rotta sbagliata, oppure ha dato dei dati al comandante Schettino sbagliati, perché altrimenti non si capisce come un comandante possa portare una nave a sbattere contro un'isola. Cioè.
I think he was treated badly. I don't think he should have been standing there alone.
It fits a story that we all have in our head. The goodie, the baddie. Captain Schettino didn't go down with his ship. He didn't fulfill his duty. And I think that was convenient.
The primary focus of that manslaughter charge, to my mind, should have rested with the company, and the balance was very heavily skewed towards the master.
It turned our attention away from lifeboats not working and bad practices of doing sail-bys that are not life-threatening, but actually killed people.
There was no great shock or surprise that he was convicted. The surprising thing is that the sentence wasn't very long. I always wonder if maybe even the judge wasn't entirely convinced that all of this was Schettino's fault. If he's truly legally responsible for the death of 32 people, why just 16 years?
Following an unsuccessful appeal, Schettino's sentence is upheld by Italy's highest court. He continues to serve his sentence at Rebibbia prison in Rome.
32 people lost their lives. That is a tragedy. And sending seafarers to jail, I don't think is the right solution. Schettino had his part to play, but there were many, many others who also had a significant part to play in this accident.
Nearly 10 years on from Costa Concordia, lessons have been learned. The technology used in ships now provide more information to the bridge on the extent of flooding that's happening. Training has been increased. The presence of unauthorised people on the bridge is more or less banned. So much has been learned.
Personally, I'll never get full closure of it. It's something you'll never forget. We're so lucky that we survived.
It took a long time for me to even enjoy things again. I think that's why I don't think about it too much, because I think it could easily consume me. All my feelings could come back very quickly.
Signor Schettino, che cosa ha detto?